This video will be for the people that want to begin with DaVinci Resolve. Whether you're switching from Premiere Pro or this is your first editing program, I'm going to teach you all the basics that you need to know. Let's go. When you start DaVinci Resolve, this is the first screen that you will see. This is where you can start your projects. Now with you, it will probably be empty. And if you want to start a new project, you can click this button, New Project, give it a name and then hit Create. I've already done that, so I'm going to click Cancel. Now what I like to do to keep things organized is to add a folder as well. And you can do that by hitting the right mouse button and then either choose New Project if you want to have a new project, or in this case a new folder, and then give it a name, and in my case it was Archive. And then after you're done with your project, you can just drag and drop it in there, and this overview will stay organized. Right, one more setting I highly advise you to change here is this of dynamic project switching. You can find this by hitting the right mouse button and then selecting it, dynamic project switching, because, let's close this down, that will allow you to switch between projects up here. Now I will show you why this is useful in a minute, but first let's start with what we have right here. Okay, the first thing I want to show you is the settings menu. So we've got the preference up here, and this is where you can change all kinds of things. Now, one important thing that a lot of people run into is that their storage is going to go to absolute zero because DaVinci Resolve is very resource intensive and it saves like cache files and stuff. Now, if that is the case for you, you can find your cache files up here in this folder. As it says here, the first media storage location in the above list will be used to store gallery stills and cache files. This location should be permanently connected to your system. Now I've made a dedicated video on how to find this and how to delete it. I'll put it up here. So be sure to check that one out because I'm pretty sure you will use it in the future. Now the second thing I would advise you to change is to go to the user one, go to project save and load, and then have this checked on, timeline backups. The reason for that is because if you delete your timeline somehow or a part of your timeline, at least you'll have a backup that you can use to grab that part that you've lost and put it back in. I've made a dedicated video on that as well, which I'll link up here. Then the last setting I want to show you is the keyboard customization. So if you're used to certain keys from a different program, you can address all of these here. You can click this on the keyboard and it will show you what it is. So I've got the Q set to start the playhead, I've got the W to end the playhead, and I've got the Z to the blade edit mode, for instance. And once you've given all the things the desired key, you can save that preset up here by clicking Save as New Preset. You can import presets if you have it somewhere else, or you can export it as well, or you can delete one if you don't use it anymore. Right. Let's close this down and go to the next part of this video, which is showcasing you what the different tabs are down below. Now the first one is your media pool. The second one is the cut page, which I won't address in this video because quite frankly, I personally don't use it because I like to edit on the edit page. This is the page that you'll probably spend the most time on. Then we've got the Fusion page, which is like the Adobe After Effects page where you can get all kinds of, or where you can actually create all kinds of great effects in DaVinci Resolve. Then the next one is the color page where you have different kinds of settings. So let me navigate to a different project so I can show you what I mean. So this is the color page with a project in it. We've got the clips down here. We've got the timeline that we've selected. We know that the effects are now active due to this one. And if I click this is my adjustment layer, you see all kinds of nodes. So you can create nodes here where you can add in certain things. So the first one is usually my primaries one. Here I have the color grading for the skin tones. And then I've got an overall one to add in some sharpness after I'm done with everything else. And then the input leads to the output with the necessary steps in between. This is where you can change all the colors. So we've got the primaries color wheels. You've got the lift, which allows you to change the darkest parts of the image. You've got the gamma, which addresses the midtones of the image. And then we've got the gain, which focuses on the brightest parts of the image. And then the offset changes the overall brightness of the image. Now you can push colors as well, as we can see up here, and we can reset everything with this button. Now in the curves menu, we've got different options. So we've got the normal curve, which you might be used to from somewhere else, where you can add in more contrast with, let's say, an S curve. And that looks horrible, but it's just about the idea. Now, let me reset that. Then we've got the other curve, the hue versus hue. So let's say we need the color picker. We're going to place it on blue. It's going to show me that this is the area where those colors are. Now I can push them up, I can drag them down, and then the hue shifts. The same goes for the hue versus saturation. We've got the hue versus luminance. We've got the luminance versus saturation, where you can address certain lightness of the image and then change the saturation that way. We've got the saturation versus saturation and the saturation versus luminance. So this allows you to change specific areas in your clip. Now let's say you've got the same clips. I don't have them right here, but I do want to show you what I mean. Let's say I want to have this clip affected and I want to have it the color grade from this clip. I can now right click and then select shot match to this clip, and then it will take all the settings from this clip and apply it to this clip. I've made a separate video on why this is useful. I'll link that up here as well, so you can have a look for yourself. Right, that's it for the color page, and for this tutorial, let's go to the Fairlight page. Now in the Fairlight page is where you will see all your audio, and it is particularly useful because you can now use something that's called audio batch fade. Sometimes when you have a cut in between clips, so if we go to the edit page, here we have certain cuts in my audio, that will give you a pop or a crack, or it just doesn't sound right. But if you go to the Fairlight page and you select those clips, you can now go up here, Fairlight, go to batch fade settings. So if you use the default settings and you click apply, and then you go to Fairlight and then apply batch fades, then that will be applied up here. Now let me show you what that has done. It has dropped off the final frame of the last clip and the first frame of the new clip, so that you will have a smooth audio transition. Let me undo that by hitting Ctrl Z, and then know that there is a mixer menu where you can put in all kinds of effects. I'm not going to address this because that will take us way too much time for this beginner tutorial, but just know that this is the page where you can edit your audio. And by that I mean the more difficult things you want to do to your audio. Because if you go to the edit tab again and you select your audio, you have an inspector tab up here. And in the inspector tab, it allows you to change certain things like volume, pan, voice isolation if you have the studio version. I absolutely love this, by the way. It gets rid of reverb as well, and it's awesome. Then we've got the equalizer here, which you can activate, and then you can change certain things that will allow you to work on the audio as well. But the more difficult stuff is done in Fairlight. And then the final one is the export page. Now, once you're done with your project, you can export your project. DaVinci Resolve comes with a couple of custom presets. So they've got a YouTube one, Vimeo one, Twitter one, TikTok one, etc. You can create your own one. So let's say you've dialed in all the settings, you've decided which format you want it to be, the codec, you've decided the resolution, which has to match with the timeline resolution, but I'll show you that in a minute. And everything else, you can then go up here and choose Save as New Preset. Give that preset a name, and then that preset will appear up here as well. So that allows you to quickly export your videos by using your own preset. Right, so let's go back to the crash course one that I'm using, so our blank canvas basically. And then you see a couple of things. First, we've got the master bin where we can add in new bins. So let's call this videos. And then we've got a video bin, and here we can import the media. Then we've got the power bins and the smart bins. I never use the smart bins, but I do love the power bins, because the power bins allows you to save certain things that you can use in every single project. So that saves you all the time and hassle to create or recreate any of these effects, but you can just create them once, drag them up here, have it saved, and then if you have a new project, you can just grab it, drop it onto the timeline, and then use it that way. Now, if you don't see the power bins, you have to go up here, and here you can check show smart bins and show power bins, and then it will show up here. Right. Adding in effects is done with the effects tab, where you can find all kinds of effects that DaVinci Resolve comes with by itself. So we've got video transitions, audio transitions, generators. So we've got like solid colors if you need something in the background. And that's a quick way to find some effects and to actually use them on your timeline. I've opened up a different project again because I want to explain the inspector tab. That's the next thing on my notes. This is where you can change certain things in the video, right? So here we have a video. You can zoom it in, zoom it out. You can change the position. You can rotate it if you want to. You can reset everything up here. You can crop it left, right, top, bottom. And it's basically got all kinds of automatic settings. Now, the dynamic zoom, for instance, that allows you to zoom in your clip automatically, and then it slowly zooms out. You can change it as well by swapping it, which means that it's zoomed out and it's now gradually zooming in. So that saves you the time to zoom in and zoom out your footage manually. But what you can do as well, if you want to, because everybody wants to know how to do this, is to set keyframes, right? So we've got the first clip. So we've got the place where we want to start creating a keyframe. Now you can click up here and then everything will contain a keyframe automatically. Or you can say like, look, I just want to change the zoom. So I'm going to set a keyframe. And then a couple of frames further, I'm going to zoom in, right? We can navigate through the different keyframes by using these buttons. And now if we play the clip, you see that it's zooming in up until the next keyframe. So these are some quick settings you can do in the inspector tab. Right, now let's go back to our fresh project and let's handle our business. The first thing I would highly encourage you to do is to create a template, right? So in the master bin, I've got a video bin. Now let's say I want an image bin, and let's say I want an audio bin as well, because I want the audio to be here, the images to be there, and the videos to be there. And in these bins, I want to create an archive, right? So I'm going to select this, right mouse button, new bin, call this archive, and then same for the audio. And you can change the names by hitting your right mouse button and then select rename bin. You can remove the bin, you know, just the standard stuff. Now, I also want to change the timeline settings, the project settings, and that can be done up here with this wheel, right? If you open that up, we've got master settings, image scaling, color management, general options, camera raw, capture and playback, subtitles and transcription, Fairlight, and path mapping. So if we go to the master settings, this allows us to change the timeline resolution. So right now it's full HD, but let's say I want a 4K timeline. I need to select this. I can use vertical resolution as well, which allows us, so let's say we're creating something for TikTok. If we hit that, it automatically changes this resolution, and that makes sure we don't have to do everything manually. In this case, I don't need it. I want to change the timeline frame to 25 frames per second because we're in Europe, and I'm going to keep everything else on default. However, know that the working folders, this is a very important one, the proxy generation location. So if you work with proxies in your project with your clips, because let's say you've got 4K clips, but your computer has a problem running them smoothly, you can add it in full HD proxy, for instance. You can save it in a folder. You can choose the folder that you want to. Now, I do this manually. The reason why I do this manually is because if I lose a lot of disk space, I know exactly where I can find the cache clips from all the finished projects. I can delete them there and then clear out a lot of disk space. So just put in a folder, just navigate to a folder that you want to, and everything should be fine. Make sure to hit save. Change project frame rate. You can't undo this action. Change. Now I did it manually, but you can also do it by importing a video clip and then dragging that clip onto the timeline. If you do that, you will get a pop-up asking you, do you want to change the frame rate of the timeline, when applicable, of course. And then if the frames per second match the frames per second that you need on your timeline, you can click change, and otherwise you have to click don't change. When is that useful? Let's say you're working with a 30 frames per second timeline, and you're going to import a 60 frames per second timeline, which you're going to slow down to 30 frames per second, then that's something you don't want to change because you're going to do it manually. Right. Now let's create a timeline as well without using a video clip. So we can click the right mouse button, timelines, and create a new timeline. I'm going to use the project settings because I've already set those here. I'm going to click create, and that adds in a video track and it adds in an audio track. Now you can mute the track for the audio right here, which can be useful when shooting something like this and then playing a clip, for instance, where you don't want that audio to be active, but just the audio of you talking. But you can also add tracks if you don't have enough. So you can add a track up here with your right mouse button and it'll add a video track. Same goes for the audio, add track, mono, stereo, or whatever you want to. So let's click stereo. So now we've got 2 audio tracks and we've got 2 video tracks, with this one being the main one. Now, let's say your audio is something that you always set the same, right? That's useful, like in my case, when I'm using the Rode Pod mic for these videos, and I use the Filmmaker Pro Kit, I believe it's called, for my other types of videos. And I always know I use these same decibel settings in every project. So rather than setting them manually in every project, I could just click in here and then I can change the volume to, in this case, +8 decibels. And I know that I have my music on my second audio track and I always use the same music and I always use -30 decibels. Now, if you know that you use voice isolation, for instance, like I said, it's a studio version, but you can activate that here as well. You can change the amount. So in my case, that would be around 75 so that it doesn't sound too robotic. But right now I'm just going to deactivate it. And then when you have everything set in place, so you've got your timeline, you've got all the bins that you need and everything that you usually start with, you can just go up here, File, Save Project As, let's call this Template. Click Save, and then every time you start up DaVinci Resolve and you see this screen, you can select your template by clicking on your right mouse button, then open up in read-only mode. That will open up this project, and then you can go to File, Save As, give it the name that you want it to be, so Crash Course DaVinci, save it, and then this is your starting point, and that saves you so much time, right? Let me navigate to this one again. There we go. Alright, so we're back in DaVinci Resolve Crash Course. We've made our template and I believe it is now time to finally import some media. Right, let's go to the video bin. Let's click the right mouse button and let's click Import Media. Now let's select all the clips that we want to use. In this case, I'm just going to select everything. I'm going to click Open and it imports all the videos, right? So now that we have our clips, we are going to drag them onto the timeline like so. And now we can cut stuff out, make cuts in between. For instance, here a cut and I want there a cut as well. I can select something, delete it, or ripple delete it, and just work on the track, right? Now, one thing I want to show you as well, so let's make a cut just for the sake of this tutorial, is that of this one, the magnetic one, the snapping tool. Why do I want to show you this? Because DaVinci Resolve has like the habit of snapping into place, right? So it snaps to the start or the end of a clip, or it snaps to the playhead. Now, if you don't want that, you have to hold the clip, click N, and now you could just drag it anywhere you want to. So let's say I want it in half. I can now release my mouse button and it will automatically be back on again. So that's a very quick way how you could just get a clip and just drag it anywhere you want to without snapping it in place. Now let's say you want a second timeline because you want to work on something else. Then you could go to right mouse button, timelines, create new timeline, and then you can select whether or not you want to use the project settings, and if not, you can change things like format, output color, and general things. I'm going to click use project settings, create. And now we've got 2 timelines again, and changing between timelines can be done by just double clicking them. Now in this case we made 2 video tracks, but let's say you need another one because you want to add in something. So in this case I want to add in my chapter animation and I want it to be above it. You could just drag it above it and DaVinci Resolve will automatically create a video track. So here's track 3, track 4, track 5. It'll do it automatically. And then if you drag it down again, it won't delete the top one, but it will remain there. So that's another way how you can add in a video track. Same goes for the audio. If you drag it down, that will add in some tracks automatically as well. Now this is an effect, Now let's say you want to change the color of this clip, but you don't want to change the color of just this clip. You want to change it or use that color grading throughout your entire project, right? The best way how to do that is by going to the effects tab up here and then use an adjustment clip. And this adjustment clip will allow you to make changes that will be applied to all the underlying clips. So if you want to change the color, you'll have to go to the color page. You have to make sure that you select the adjustment clip and then make your adjustments accordingly. So right now I'm just going to exaggerate it to show you what I mean. And now if we go from this clip to that clip, we see that the effect is the same rather than just changing it here and then having to change it there and changing it there. So adjustment clips are a very great way to create something over several clips. You can also create zoom effects that way. And then once you're satisfied with this and you want to use it in multiple projects, you can just drag it into your Power Bin and it will be stored here, where if you go to a different project, it will still be in your Power Bin. And then you can drag it here and we see that the same effect has been applied up here. So that's a great use of the adjustment layer. Now let's go back. Let's delete it from our Power Bin because we don't need it, but you get the point. Now, let's say if I drag this up here, right? And we've got 1, 2, 3, we've got 4 kinds of tracks. I'm just going to place this here because it's a bit more easier to work with. Let's make this shorter. Okay, so now we've got a lot of things going on in our timeline. And let's say we have some sound effects down here as well. Then it would be a good thing if we could organize that a bit better, right? But before I do that, let me show you this right here, because this will allow you to change the track height of the video clip and the audio track, which gives you more overview in your timeline and allows you to see what is going on in your project, right? Now let's drag this in. There we go. Now let's say this is something that I've created and I want it to be more organized. I can select everything, hit the right mouse button and choose new compound clip. I can give that clip a name, and in this case I'm going to leave it on default. I'm going to click create, and now you see that everything is being changed into one, right? And just know that it's being saved in the folder that you've selected, right? So it's now in my video folder. But the great thing about it is, let's say I delete it, it's not gone. I can just grab it up here and then drag it down here again, and we have the same video again. Now, let's say you want to change the clips, the underlying clips individual again. That's possible by hitting the right mouse button and then select decompose in place using clips only, right? It decomposes, which means that if you have a compound clip, so let's undo that. I could have used Ctrl Z, but if you're using something like a zoom effect, so we start at 1 and we are going to end in 1.2, right? So we've zoomed this in. That looks great. Now if we decompose it in place and we play it again, the zoom is now gone. So please remember that everything that you're doing to the compound clip will be lost once you decompose it in place again. However, there's another trick. So we've got the keyframe set here. We've got the keyframe set there. So the zoom is now back. If we go to right mouse button and then open in timeline, and let's say we have the adjustment layer and I'm going to change the color from purple to, let's say, green in this case. I'm going back to the edit tab. Now, if I go back to my original timeline, which is timeline number 1, the effect is still here, and look at that. The zoom effect is still here and the color is being applied. So if you want to change something to your compound clip, don't choose decompose in place using clips only, but choose open in timeline, and that will allow you to work on the underlying clips. Right. Moving on to the next one, which is creating a fusion clip, because the thing I just showed you a minute ago, so the chapter animation, this one, is actually a fusion clip. Now how you could create one is clicking inside a bin that you want it to be, right mouse button, and then new fusion composition. Give it a name, in this case test case, frame rate 25. Let's click create. Let's drag it onto our timeline. And now if we go to fusion, we have our fusion clip. Media out. We can add in a background. We can connect that background to the media out. Our background is now black, but we can change it any color that we like. Let's go yellow or pink. I like pink. So now we have our background, which is our media out. Now you can also add in things from the media pool. You can add in a video, and then you can add in a merge node. Now let's drag the merge node with the shift between the background and the media out, and then we have the media in, which we can now connect to the merge node, which now overlays our background. Now, if you want to see the media out is on the right side, if you want to see the media in, you can click this button. So the right one is for the right window, the left one is for the left window, so you can know exactly what the different clips are. I like to rename them by hitting right mouse button and then rename, and let's call this video, so that everything stays organized, right? Now, I'm not going to show you how to create a certain Fusion effect because I'll create a different video on Fusion itself. But this is an easy way how to create a Fusion clip in DaVinci Resolve. Now let's go to this clip again. So the one that we've got originally. Now let's say we're going to add in another clip, which is far too long, but let's add in a second clip. If I drag this inwards, now the audio track is moving as well. And the same goes if I move it outwards. But if you click the right mouse button and you select this, link clips, they will be unlinked, which means that you can move them individually. So in this case, I can bring in the video clip again without the audio clip being overridden, right? So we've got two clips. Let me zoom this one out because this is just for the sake of this tutorial. Another way how to create a Fusion clip from two clips or maybe even more layers is just by selecting all of them, right mouse button, and then click New Fusion Clip. It turns everything into one clip, and then if you go to Fusion, you see that we've got our media in, which is this clip, and we've got another media in, which is this clip. And that allows us to work with these two clips and create something great. Right, let's go back. And the final one, how to create a Fusion clip, is just going to the clip that you want to. So in this case, this clip. And then go to the Fusion page. And then that allows you to create something here as well. Please keep in mind though, because this is something that drove me nuts before. Let's say we have a watermark, okay? And now if I go to Fusion, I only see the watermark, so I don't see the underlying clip. Now you can change that by disabling a video track. So let's say you want to play something or you have your color grade on top of it, but it makes your system run very bad when, you know, looking back at your footage or something. You can just disable it temporarily, then keep your edits, and then once you're done and ready to export, you can actually enable them again. But in this case, you can disable the video track, right? So now we've got only the video track beneath it. Go back to Fusion, and there we go. Now we can edit it. So if you have a track on top of the other clip, you won't be able to. Now let's say you want to go to a new Fusion clip and then go to Fusion. Same thing happens. You still won't be able to because you have something above it. It's a quirky thing. That's one of the things I don't like about DaVinci Resolve. But hey, there's so many things you can do to create a Fusion clip, so I wouldn't worry about this too much. But if it just drives you nuts because you can't understand why you're not able to work in Fusion, this might be one of the causes. Right. Now, once you're done with your project, so let's grab a project that's done. You can go to the export page, fill in all the details, or use your preset that you have saved. And then you can click add to render queue. And once you're ready to render something, just click render one, and it will start the rendering process. You won't be able to work in DaVinci Resolve when that happens, but that's only logical. And if you go like, oh, I forgot something, you can just stop it. You don't have to wait for everything to be done. And then you can just go back to the edit tab and then work on your edit some more. And that, my friends, was a crash course in DaVinci Resolve. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys next time. Doei!